again, guys. This is 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th writing for April 14th. How's everything going? Have you figured out, decided what your writing career choice might be this time? Have you decided whether you're going to be a sportscaster, a newscaster? What's your thought? How are you feeling about this assignment so far? I'm going to stop for just a minute because you're looking over my shoulder. I have had several say, wow, Miss Janet, we'd like to know more about your house, your life, your whatever. I can't show you my whole house because there's parts of it right now I don't even want to see. You should see what happens when a STEM classroom at church gets emptied out of 2 closets and then carried back to my toolbox tutoring office. It looks like a scientist threw up in there, so I can't possibly show you that right now. I keep closing the door because I can't deal with it. But I will show you what I refer to as the wall of weddings. Look at these. My husband and I have been married for 36 years, and we have 3 sons, and they married 3 daughters for me. And that's pretty great because it's pretty nice not to be a mother-in-law. It's pretty nice just to be their mom too. And then with those marriages, I have so far 2 super fabulous little grand girls, and I love them and they light me up, and so whatever. Anyhow, so this is kind of our wall of weddings. Glad that's all done. Also glad I only had sons because I didn't have to pay for all those fancy weddings, and there were some pretty nice weddings. All right, guys. So let's talk about, we're going to go on and talk about the next 2 careers that you may stumble into or pursue doggedly as writers. And the first one that comes up is the magazine articles. The cover that we have for, excuse me, just a minute, I don't want to mess up my notes here. Writing the story for the cover article. Okay. I'm getting ready to show you something that's pretty stinking cool. Look at this. You see this? No, it's not just backwards. It's actually in Italian. Don't worry about it. I'll show you something really cool. Let's see if I can get a better angle on it. If you look, this figure right here is one that my husband has painted. And because I don't dare put a post-it note inside his magazine, I can open this up, and part of the cover story is right here. And if I were to tell you all about this really cool thing, what you're seeing is step-by-step processes of assembling a couple of horse body parts. And then everything is in Italian, is written describing step-by-step of this cover story that my husband is included in. It's actually pretty cool. Quite a great honor. And then there he is sitting in his little studio back there. And so this is a really cool thing. I'm married to kind of a hot dog and artist, guys. And for him to be growing in his hobby the way that he has is one thing. For there to be international recognition of this is really something else. And then this is a very famous magazine amongst all of these hobby modelers and painters, and for him not only to make the cover but to get this much magazine space, that's kind of a big deal. I don't know if the page turns or not. Oh yes, excuse me, I almost forgot. There's a whole nother page. That's the back side of that finished figure. And the thing that's really interesting about this is this figure is probably only about that tall. I probably should have brought the figure to the table here. Another day. Okay, so a magazine cover is something that's usually is very restricted. A writer will be told what's going on, what's going to go on the cover. They have to go out and write the article, and they have a very specific set of parameters as to what they can do. They're very confined in their writing. They not only, they can't necessarily choose their own article. Sometimes they're just told, hey, you go write this, and they go and do that. Some of the restrictions that you would see is in, let me see if I can get back to one of these others. is look at how large the pictures are, because this magazine truly is all about the art itself. And so look at how restricted some of the writing is. It can tell you exactly where your cover art is going to be, your photo art is going to be, and then how limited you are in what's called column space. If you look at this, you can see, boy, I'm a printer's daughter and this is all starting to come back, guys. This is considered a 3-column page, and this is a 2-column photograph. These are single-column photographs, and this is single-column print. And this is what's called dead space. And usually, I'm not sure why this went. Maybe it's just the artwork that they try to avoid having what's called dead space along the crease. Usually you would find dead space to the outside. It's usually a little bit better of a page layout, but you know, you can't have too much of that. Glad I didn't show you that cover too long. Let's see here. So magazine cover stories are considered to be the big job in the magazine. And the reason is because what's on the cover is going to catch the eye first. And frequently, it's whatever is on the cover that would prompt someone to buy the magazine in the first place. They're not necessarily going to go in there looking for a little teeny tiny article. And as expensive as magazines have gotten, people are going to be a lot more judicial how they do that. So we get this magazine sent to our home every month because of my husband's hobby. But for him to make the cover of that thing, that was just a really huge deal. And yes, we've pored over it and over it and over it. Can we read it? No, but we already know what he wrote when he said it in English, because I actually helped him write the article and then sent all the information to the publishers, and then whatever rewriting they had to do to change it from English to Italian and get the right word count and get the right column count, number counts, and all that. You need, it's a pretty big deal to be that cover artist. Your story is going to draw more readers than any other article in that book. You have to choose your subject, and usually the magazine publisher will tell you, this is what I want about that subject. This is the angle I want you to pursue. So to be that glamorous cover story article writer is both an honor and kind of a burden, because you don't necessarily have a lot of free reign. A good publisher will know which writer can write the best article that he has for his cover. So that's interesting. All right, the next thing that we have, the next subject was a photojournalist. And remember, we talked a little bit about photojournalist wasn't just no story writing at all, more photos, less journalism. It's really not that way. It's the telling of a story with pictures, but there's something that's kind of interesting. I want to show you a magazine I just picked up, and I hadn't even thought about this, but in sharing this with Miss Kay, it was rather interesting, because look at the cover story on this photojournalistic magazine. Anne Frank. It's been 75 years since Anne Frank was locked away with her family and another family. They actually had 7 people living in 450 square feet, and for the most part they had to live in silence during that time, which 2 teenage girls living in silence, not usually going to happen. But it was really interesting, and Ms. Kay pointed out the timeliness of an article like this, because we're kind of all living in a quarantine. We're not having to live silently, and we're not in fear of, death, and we're not thinking that somebody's going to knock on the door and take us away. It's not that kind of thing. So much more intensity. And the thing that I need to point out to you guys about photojournalism is you can take a picture and you can put it inside of an article, but there's a word that you need to know about in your journalism, and you need to be ethical. And what it would mean to be ethical would be to be moral, to be honest, and to be correct in the usage of the pictures that you have and the story that you're telling. And so here's just a picture of Anne Frank and her sister, and they begin telling the story. And I like the title of this, Safe for Now. If you've ever read the Diary of Anne Frank, you would find out some of the things that she went through and how things turned out for her. There's descriptions of the place that she lived, up a hidden staircase and things like that. Some of the pictures that you would see in photojournalism like this, they are very frequently, well, in this particular case especially, a little bit frightening. We do not have children in the street with their hands raised right now in fear of our confinement. We are more concerned about getting a virus than getting a ticket or getting arrested, or worse than that. Families are feeling a little bit separated right now, but we've got FaceTime, we've got Zoom, we've got any number of things that we can be doing. So going on through discussing the photojournalism, I'm just going to read this to you. There's an adage that says a picture is worth 1,000 words. However, in your case, there is no escaping the words. You are going to have to do some writing. Pictures carry interest, but an ethical photojournalist will be sure the photos chosen tell the story and that they're being told in a truthful manner. In addition, the text must be truthful in the description of the photos. There are so many different stories that are told in this particular book, but the pictures are very honest. The Holocaust was a really horrible time. And there's some pictures in there that, based on your age, you may not want to see those. There comes a time when you're looking at this type of photojournalism where you have to say, okay, I think I can handle it, and I'm going to go ahead and look. And, the intensity of what war can do. War photojournalism is some of the toughest to look at. It's just not a good thing sometimes, but these stories have to be told. There's an adage also that says if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And that's one of the things that photojournalism can really do, is they can help us to learn from some of the things we did badly and also some of the things that we did pretty great. I mean, you've got Anne Frank on one instance, and her life was pretty rough and horrible time, and history was pretty bad. We have times where, America was a slave country. That's not something we ever want to look back at, but if we learn from it and we don't do that again, then that helps us to be better people. Some of the other things that you see in photojournalism is the landing of the moon. And I'm going way back on these things, guys, but when you look at pictures of lunar landings and you see that we have built a space shuttle, and Canada and Japan, and we're all selling parts and getting little modules together, and we've got little Japanese labs, and we've got little Canadian labs and Russian labs, and somewhere up there floating around in space, we've learned how to work together. And so some of those things are pretty fantastic. But always making sure that pictures that you have chosen are chosen for an ethical purpose, and you wouldn't want to take a picture of some little child that's, in a war situation and make it look like it's, just happening, on a street in America. You have to make sure that you're very honest with these things. And ethical journalism is so important, guys. You have to be solid in your knowledge, solid in your honesty, and in your integrity to be a good journalist. It's something that I encourage people to pursue. We need good journalists. It's an important part of our lifetime. And it's one of our constitutionally protected rights, and I think you should know about those things too. This book that you're reading right now, The White Horse of Lipizza, although this book is historical fiction, there are still things that you can do through creative writing that can make for a really neat a bit of photojournalism. Would you study the horses? There's plenty of pictures out there. If could you study the trainers and the regimen that they go through? How does a guy become a trainer? That's part of what our story is about. What about the royalty and the nobility of the time and the people that actually own these horses, and the fact that these horses were war horses? There's enough history in our historical fiction to make sure that if you chose to do photojournalism, you'd be able to find the photos that you wanted. Guys, I'm going to give you a big caution on this. When you are on the internet, you know my rule, adult supervision required. Something else you need to consider, guys, don't go printing tons and tons and tons. Be very judicial in the pictures and the picture sizes that you're going to use. If you can do any kind of a paste-up design with your work, you may only have to print 1 or 2 copies, and you need to make sure that you get your parents' permission before you start blowing through all of their colored ink or even the black and white ink, guys. Make sure you have parental supervision and parental permission to consume that much ink. I do want you guys to, if you choose to do this, to get at least 1 printed copy, because at the end of our year, we're just going to have an online celebration of some kind. We're going to have to pick one of our favorite works, and we're going to share those together somehow. I have something in mind, and I still have to get my logistics together for that, but I've got a plan for you guys for coming together one more time. So get cracking on your work. Feel free to post anything you want to the parent homepage. There's been some really cool stuff out there. It's very encouraging for us as teachers to see that and to enjoy what you guys are doing out there. Just seeing your faces is just nice to know that everybody's okay out there. And, I love you. Work hard. And I will see you this time again next week. Bye, kids. Work hard.